What is going on, everybody? How are we doing today? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. Back today with our Wednesday training camp report for your Miami Dolphins. Actually, the first day of on-field action during this training camp period for your Miami Dolphins. Plenty to get to today, both on and off the field. A day by all accounts, one dominated pretty much by the Miami Dolphins defense. 4 interceptions, multiple sacks on the day, a little bit of a tongue lashing for our offensive line. We're going to get to all of that here in a second. Before we jump in, your thoughts from on-field day one for your Miami Dolphins, from any of the reports you may have read, watched, anything you're going to hear from me today. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Get subscribed if you haven't done so already. Definitely appreciate that. Thank you, as always, to all of those who already have done so. Let's start right there with Tua Tagovailoa. We learned on Tuesday that he was going to be in the building. Obviously, we talked about his agents wanting him to hold out, kind of follow in the footsteps of Jordan Love. Like, let's not do anything until we get that contract extension. Well, Tua has officially arrived. He's officially practicing, but it's essentially kind of a holdover as to what he did in minicamp, which was participating in individual drills, participating in the 7-on-7 action, but then when it was the 11-on-11 team drills, Tua was essentially nowhere to be found. Now, he did take 2 snaps during these team periods. However, it was 2 handoffs, so he did not throw a single pass during team drills in Wednesday's practice. And Mike McDaniel sort of talked about that before the practice as well. Said kind of everything right now with Tua, with the contract, with what he's going to do while he's at this practice, kind of staging this hold-in. It's a very fluid situation. But at the end of the day, at least he's in the building. At least he's getting some of these reps. And actually, if you listen to some of the Miami Dolphins players, they think if this contract extension kind of holdout ends up lasting a little bit longer, they think Tua is going to end up doing more and more. And now, obviously, that's coming from Tua's teammates, not necessarily Tua himself. He's got a lot of people in his ear right now. I can guarantee you that. Regardless, hopefully his teammates are right. Hopefully we see more of Tua. Hopefully we just get the contract extension done. As of now, today, I don't have any actual updates on that extension. But regardless, kind of the hold-in continues into on-field action for at least day one for Tua Tagovailoa. We talked about a little bit of that media availability. Now, I don't put too much stock in NFL head coaches' media availabilities. I will give Mike McDaniel a lot of credit. He's one of the more animated, forthcoming, outright, just kind of honest coaches in the NFL, but it's still NFL coach media availability. So we'll go through these updates fairly quickly. He would not put a timeline on the return of either Jaelan Phillips or Bradley Chubb. But as we talked about, Phillips is much closer to being ready to be available early in the season compared to a guy like Bradley Chubb. We talked last week that as of the last report that I got, Bradley Chubb is looking more so kind of in that mid to late October range. And like I said, a lot can happen between now and then. But at this point in time, Jaelan Phillips definitely ahead of where Bradley Chubb is. Mike McDaniel did say there's no scheduled return day from the PUP list for Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, he has not made his Miami Dolphins training camp debut yet. Put on PUP yesterday, but like we said, those players can come off at any point in time. And think about this right now, kind of like we talked about yesterday, an opportunity to see some other guys at work as well. They're basically just trying to see what they can do to ease Odell Beckham Jr. in. I think as of every account so far, more of a precautionary move, ease him back in fairly slowly. They also asked him about Terron Armstead, and Mike McDaniel said, expect some full days, expect some partial days. Essentially what we've grown kind of accustomed to in regards to any sort of practice when it comes to Terron Armstead. And case in point, Terron Armstead did not practice today. There was also no Chris Brooks at today's practice. What we do, in case you're a new viewer of the Fins Up Network, we always get a lot of new viewers during training camp. So thank you, first and foremost. Welcome to the Fins Up Network for all of the new viewers as well. But for these training camp recap practices, I essentially shoot through the positions and give all the updates and notes that we were able to accumulate from the day. So we'll start with the quarterback. Like I said, Tua only took those 2 snaps in 11s, both run plays. He did throw an interception in some of his 7-on-7 work, otherwise noted for being Tua, for being surgical. The interception actually came on a tip pass by Cyron Neal and was picked off by Zeke Vandenberg. And we actually have video clip right here that we will show you. As you can see there, Neal was able to get in front of what looked like Braxton Berrios, pop that ball up, and I believe that was the one that Zeke ended up intercepting. Moving on from the quarterback position, outside of Tua, neither Skylar White or Mike White, or Skylar Thompson or Mike White had noteworthy days. I was told that Mike White actually struggled pretty hard, and another guy that struggled pretty hard with the extended amount of snaps that he was given because of Tua not participating in all of the drills. Garvin Hardison, the undrafted free agent guy that's essentially quarterback for kind of a camp arm right now, noted for being severely off target kind of throughout the day, ended up throwing back-to-back interceptions, ended up missed the opportunity to even give a handoff off because he couldn't get from under center fast enough. And then he also threw a near interception that ended up being dropped by the defensive back. So like I said, not a very clean day for the offense in general, not too many highlights. But one of the highlights from the offensive side of the ball, Devon Achane. Travis Wingfield was one of the guys, mentioned a home run type of run by Devon Achane, said he's already looking in mid-season form. And Achane got to talk a little bit to the media as well. Once again was asked about his role potentially expanding as a pass catcher. And he said, yeah, I welcome that. I think I can get it done on the ground. I can get it done through the air. So we're going to continue and hopefully look forward to his game evolving to that next level where he's a more threat as a pass catcher as well. I was personally told that he was also one of the standout players from the day offensively. Said that he looks like a Pro Bowl caliber player out there. And quite honestly, they ended the message to me with, if he's not wearing the orange jersey tomorrow, where if you're not familiar with training camp practices, the guy from the standout performer from the previous day's practice gets to wear the orange jersey at the next day's practice. If there's an offensive player and it's not Devon Achane that's wearing that orange jersey, the system is rigged. He looked that good today. But another offensive player that looked pretty good today, Jaelan Waddle, noted for climbing the ladder and coming down with a tough pass from Skylar Thompson, also had a tough catch across the middle that ended up leading him into a collision, but was able to hold on to that ball, secure it for the catch. But talk about a guy that's having a great offseason so far. Everything we saw from him, from OTAs, from minicamp, obviously day one here in training camp, so a smaller sample size, but even during their testing that they do on day one when they just show up to camp, he was actually testing faster this year than he was last year. So yeah, more speed for him, and Tyreek did the same thing, by the way, as well. Speaking of Tyreek, we got video of him catching a pass from Tua against Cameron Smith, brought to you by the Miami Dolphins social media team. As you can see there, hits Tyreek on one of those out routes. Get used to that. Obviously, we talked a little bit yesterday about the ball getting spread around a little bit more this season, but yeah, Tyreek's still going to be that guy in the Dolphins offense. Last receiver note, Malik Washington credited with a drop. Obviously, we're going to want to clean that up. We talked about the offensive line, the offense in general having a rough day. The offensive line might have taken the cake for who had the roughest day. Jack Driscoll was in at center during a botched quarterback center exchange with Skylar Thompson. Now, the Miami Dolphins are usually pretty tight-lipped about where their offensive linemen are lining up in these training camp practices, but we know that Jack Driscoll is in line in that mix for that starting right guard spot. And now, obviously, with this report, we know he's getting a little bit of run at backup center as well. So hearing this, it's probably not great news, losing the ball like that, but then you also consider, what if something happened to Aaron Brewer? Your options right now, at least based on kind of what I'm thinking, are Liam Eichenberg, because he's done it in the past. And now, obviously, we got Jack Driscoll, who was taking some snaps there today. It can get thin quick. We cannot have any injuries. Every NFL team can say that, but quite honestly, it almost looks like your backup center might end up being the guy that ends up getting second place in that right guard spot. A lot of time left, a lot of training camp to happen, but yeah, not a great day from the offensive line. One of the beat writers noted that not all the interceptions were actually on the quarterback. Some of them were due to that poor offensive line play. and poor enough offensive line play that it warranted them being talked to by the coaches as an entire unit after the practice. And the word that was given to me was he kind of challenged their professionalism, basically saying, hey, you know what? It's go time right now. You're one of the, this is me paraphrasing, and this is me speaking for them right here. It's go time. You're probably one of the weakest links, one of the weakest units on this team. Be a professional. You got to end up carrying this team at some point in time if we're going to end up going to that next level. So yeah, Butch Barry, the Miami Dolphins coaching staff, challenging that offensive line early in training camp. Let's go on to the defensive side of the ball. Deshaun Hand credited with the sack. Brandon Peely credited with multiple pressures and at least one sack as well. And we had wondered a lot of the offseason which interior defensive lineman is going to step up, end up being that guy that can play along Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell. Well, I'll tell you right now, we got these two guys that got their names in multiple reports today. So we're looking for one or two of these guys to step up. Hopefully we can continue to get a little bit of continuity with some of these guys, continue to stack up some positive practices, but Hand and Peely getting the nod today. If we're looking at the edge and the linebackers, Emmanuel Ogbah, welcome back to Miami after, he was here, but at the end of the day, we got him on a much cheaper contract, much more team-friendly in regards to cap. Thanks the front office for that. He was credited with the sack. We talked about the orange jersey. Jordan Brooks was in the orange jersey today at linebacker after what would have been the final probably practice from minicamp. We talked about Zeke Vandenberg getting the interception on the tip pass from Neal. And Travis Wingfield listed Quentin Bell as being an early standout of the day on the defensive side of the ball, said he was showing up all over the field. Now, it would be interesting if he starts stacking some of these practices together. Could a guy like Quentin Bell end up being the guy that pushes a guy like Channing Tindall, maybe a Duke Riley, kind of out of the way? We've kind of seen what we have with those, and maybe a guy like Quentin Bell, if he can continue to stack these practices, get in line for more snaps, get in line for one of those roster spots, because most likely one of those linebackers I just mentioned aren't going to make this final roster, maybe even two of them. So if a guy like Quentin Bell can continue to go out there, make plays as well, we could use it, because depth at linebacker was tested last year, and we didn't like the results when we had to see how far we had to go into that depth. We'll rack things up in the secondary where we had a little bit of an injury scare. We'll end with that note. But Wingfield also noted that Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller looked as advertised as this team's starting cornerback. So that's great to hear. Hopefully we don't have, I'm going to knock on wood. That's what that noise is right now. I think it was last year practice 2 or 3 when Jalen Ramsey went down. That's why I knocked on wood. I don't want anything bad happen to him missing games to start the regular season. The interceptions, Nick Needham, Jordan Poyer, and Siren Neal came down with the other 3 interceptions on the day. Poyer and Neal's came on the back-to-back plays that we mentioned, both former Buffalo Bills, which typically would bother me, but now that they're Miami Dolphins, we'll let it slide. Marcus May was the player that had the near interception on the Hardison throw, ended up being a dropped interception. So yeah, the defense could have easily had 5 interceptions today. Then we talked about the injury. Javon Holland dinged up early in practice. I think it was like the second 7-on-7 play of the day. Ended up colliding with Malik Washington, kind of flipped over him. Tried going back into drills, was ultimately attended by a trainer, then never ended up making it back out there. I asked my connection prior to recording this for a quick update, was told that it's really probably going to end up being nothing, was kept out more for precautionary reasons. There's no long-term ramifications in play at this point in time. So it looks like we maybe dodged a little bit of a bullet. We know that Holland hurt both of his knees in that Black Friday game last year against the Jets. So that's obviously what came to my mind right away. Looks like we avoided anything serious. Looks like he was held out more as a precautionary reason at this point in time. But to wrap up, we talked about the idea of what would the team look like if we ended up losing a Holland or a Jordan Poyer. And that's a life that I don't think we really want to know. Because, yeah, Marcus May has started, I believe, every single game that he's appeared in the NFL. But at the end of the day, what happens if we get another injury and he's got to go down? That unit in general, I like that unit. But if you start suffering an injury or two, it gets real thin real quick. So, yeah, I like the idea of keeping Holland on the shelf there for a little while as a precautionary reason. Dolphins fans, we will cut it there for today. Thanks as always for tuning in. Like I said in the beginning, get subscribed. We will be back with training camp reports on every single practice that we have a report to give on that is open to the media. Thanks again, as always, Miami Dolphins fans. And until next time, fins up.